December 18, 1944, Ortona, Italy. The sound came first. That terrible ripping sound, like 1,000 sheets of cloth being torn apart at once, but amplified beyond anything human ears were meant to endure. The German machine guns opened fire at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Three of them, positioned with brutal precision, 85 meters to the left, 95 meters straight ahead, 120 meters to the right, a perfect triangle of death. Sergeant Thomas Wade hit the frozen ground as the first burst of gunfire chewed through the stone wall above his head. 47 American soldiers dove for cover behind what used to be a bakery. The building was mostly rubble now, like everything else in this Italian town, like every town they had fought through for the past year. The MG-42 machine guns kept firing, 1,200 rounds every minute, each gun. That number meant something when you were on the receiving end. It meant the air itself became solid with bullets. It meant you could not move, could not think, could only press your body into whatever cover you could find and pray the stone would hold. Dust and broken brick rained down with each burst. The cold December air filled with the smell of cordite and pulverized mortar. Wade kept his face in the dirt and listened. Even over the roar of German firepower, he heard something that made his blood turn cold in his veins. The Germans were laughing, their voices carried across the frozen street. Harsh sounds, mocking sounds. They were shouting to each other in German. Wade did not speak the language, but he knew what they were saying. He had heard it before, in other towns, other ambushes. They were making fun of the American weapons, the slow American guns, the Browning automatic rifles that fired only 500 rounds per minute, less than half the speed of the German MG-42s. Hitler's buzzsaw, the Germans called their weapon. Because of that terrible sound it made, that ripping, tearing sound that meant death was coming faster than you could run from it. 4 American soldiers were down in the first 90 seconds. Wade saw them fall. Young men, boys really. Some of them had been in combat less than a month. They hit the ground and did not get up. The medics could not reach them. Every time someone moved, all 3 German guns would open fire at once. The bullets kicked up dirt and stone all around the wounded men. The medics had to watch, had to listen to the screaming, could do nothing. This was how Americans died in Italy, pinned down by superior firepower, unable to advance, unable to retreat, waiting for artillery to arrive and pound the German positions into rubble, trading lives for time, trading blood for ground. 9 soldiers were wounded now. 4 minutes had passed. The math was brutal and simple. At this rate, every man in the platoon would be hit in less than 20 minutes. Lieutenant Robert Hayes crawled through the rubble toward Wade. His face was gray with brick dust. His helmet had a fresh bullet scratch across it, 3 inches lower, and he would be dead. Wade, Hayes had to shout over the noise. We need to pull back. We cannot win a firefight against those MG-42s. That was what the manual said. That was what every officer learned at command school. When you are outgunned, you retreat. You call in artillery. You pound the enemy position until nothing is left but craters and corpses. Wade did not answer immediately. He was counting, watching the German positions through the gaps in the rubble. His eyes tracked the muzzle flashes. His mind tracked the patterns. Left gun, 8 seconds of fire. Then silence for 4 seconds while they reloaded. Center gun, 6 seconds of fire, 5 seconds of silence. Right gun, 7 seconds of fire, 3 seconds to reload. Patterns. Everything had patterns. Wade had learned that in the forests of Montana, animals followed patterns. Even predators, even the most dangerous ones. They thought their speed beat your aim, thought their power beat your patience. They were usually wrong. Hayes grabbed Wade's shoulder. Did you hear me? We need to fall back. Wade finally looked at him. His eyes were calm, too calm for a man lying in the dirt while 1,200 bullets per minute screamed overhead. Give me 10 minutes, Wade said. Hayes stared at him like he had lost his mind. 10 minutes, Wade, we have 11 casualties already. In 10 minutes, we will have 20. Not if I am right. And if you are wrong, Wade pulled the radio closer. Then you call in the artillery like you wanted to anyway. Hayes studied Wade's face. He had seen the sergeant shoot during training back in England. had watched him put 20 rounds through 20 targets at 100 meters. No misses, not luck, skill, the kind of skill you cannot teach. The kind you are either born with or spend a lifetime learning. What are you thinking? Hayes asked. I am thinking those Germans are counting wrong. Counting wrong. They think 1,200 beats 500. They think more bullets win. Wade shifted position slightly, pulled his Browning automatic rifle closer, checked the magazine. 20 rounds. He had 12 magazines total, 240 bullets. But they are measuring the wrong thing, Wade continued. They are measuring bullets fired, not bullets that hit. The German guns kept firing, kept laughing, kept tearing the street apart. Wade keyed the radio. Captain Brennan, this is Sergeant Wade. Request permission to remain in position for 10 minutes before withdrawal. The radio crackled. Then an angry voice came through. Sergeant, you have 11 casualties and 3 machine guns pinning you down. Fall back immediately. That is a direct order. Hayes took the radio. Sir, this is Lieutenant Hayes. I recommend we give Sergeant Wade the requested time. Silence. Then, Lieutenant, are you out of your mind? No, sir, but I have seen Wade shoot, and I think he might be onto something. A longer pause. Wade could hear other voices in the background. Officers arguing. Finally, Captain Brennan came back on. 10 minutes, Sergeant Wade. Not 1 second more. If this does not work, I am calling in every artillery battery in range, and you are looking at a court-martial for disobeying retreat orders. Do you understand? Yes, sir. 10 minutes. Wade looked at his watch. 6:54 in the morning. He had until 7:04. He crawled through the rubble toward 3 other Browning positions. Private Danny Lee, Private Mike Sullivan, Corporal Eddie Torres. Each man had a bar. Each man looked terrified. The German guns kept firing. The laughter kept coming. Wade gathered the 3 men close so they could hear him over the noise. We are going to do something different, Wade said. His voice was steady, like he was teaching a hunting lesson back in Montana, like bullets were not screaming overhead. We are not going to pray and pray. We are going to aim. Sullivan, the soldier from Boston, shook his head. Corporal doctrine says suppressive fire. Keep their heads down. That is what works. Doctrine is written for open fields, Wade said. This is 100 meters in rubble. Different rules. He pointed at each German position in turn, made sure every man understood. Left gun fires for 8 seconds, reloads for 4, center guns 6 and 5, right guns 7 and 3. They follow patterns. All soldiers do. We are going to wait for the reload. Then we are going to put 3 to 5 rounds exactly where we want them. Right at the gunner, or right at the muzzle flash if you cannot see him clearly. Private Lee was shaking. He was 19 years old. This was his first real battle. Sergeant, what if it does not work? Wade looked at the young soldier, saw his father in those frightened eyes, saw himself at 19. Before the war, before the killing. Then the lieutenant calls in the artillery and we get out of here, Wade said. But Danny, I think those Germans are about to learn something about American weapons. He positioned the 3 teams 10 meters apart. Staggered positions, overlapping fields of fire, each team watching a different German gun. Private Lee and his loader would take the left position, the one 85 meters away. Torres would take the center, 95 meters. Wade would handle the right, 120 meters. The furthest, the hardest shot. Remember, Wade said, wait for the reload. Aim, 3 to 5 rounds. No more. Then wait for the next reload. We are not trying to match their firepower. We are trying to hit their gunners. Sullivan still looks skeptical. This goes against everything they taught us. Everything they taught us assumes we need to outshoot them, Wade said. But in the woods back home, if you miss a deer with your first shot, you do not get a second one. The deer hears the shot and runs. He checked his rifle one more time. These German gunners are the same. If we spray bullets everywhere, they will keep their heads down and keep firing. But if we aim, wait, and drop them one by one, the whole position falls apart. It was 6:58, 6 minutes left on the countdown. Wade crawled back to his position, set up his bar on its bipod. The small folding legs kept the weapon steady, made it easier to aim. The Germans did not use bipods on their MG-42s as much. They relied on firepower, on speed, on terror. Wade relied on something different. The German gun on the right stopped firing. Wade counted in his head. 1, 2, 3. On 3, he moved his finger from the trigger guard to the trigger itself, found the German gunner in his sights. The man was bent over the weapon, feeding in a new ammunition belt. His head and shoulders were visible above the sandbags. Wade took a breath, let half of it out, the way his father had taught him, the way he had taught 100 hunters in Montana. Smooth, steady, no jerking, just a gentle squeeze. The bar made its sound, tack, tack, tack. 3 rounds. The first hit the sandbag in front of the gunner. The second hit the German in the shoulder. The third hit him in the chest. The gunner fell backward. His replacement jumped up immediately, grabbed the gun, started to bring it around. Wade was already aimed. Tack, tack, 2 rounds. Both hit. The replacement dropped. The German gun went silent. To the left, Private Lee was firing. Tack, 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 tack. 4 rounds in quick succession, then silence. Then 3 more rounds. In the center, Torres fired 5 rounds. Waited. Fired 4 more. The German MG-42 on the right tried to come alive again. A third soldier had jumped behind the weapon. But Wade was ready. 3 more rounds. The gun went silent again. 90 seconds had passed since Wade fired his first shot. 2 of the 3 German positions were completely quiet. No more gunfire, no more laughter, just silence. The third gun, the one in the center, was still trying to shoot. But the gunner was firing wild now. His bullets were going high, hitting the buildings behind the Americans. He was scared. Wade could tell by the way the gun was moving. Quick, jerky movements instead of smooth sweeps. Lieutenant Hayes was staring at the German positions with his mouth open. "It is actually working," he whispered. "Wade, it is actually working." The last German machine gun went silent after 6 minutes of fighting. Just 6 minutes. That was all it took for Wade and his 2 BR teams to break an ambush that should have killed or wounded every American soldier on that street. The silence that followed was almost louder than the gunfire had been. Wade kept his weapon aimed, kept watching the German positions. His finger was still on the trigger, still ready, but nothing moved. He had fired 23 rounds from his first magazine. Lee had used 21. Torres had used 20, 64 rounds total, and 15 German soldiers were dead or badly wounded across 3 positions. The math was impossible, but it was real. Captain Brennan's voice came over the radio, static, then disbelief. "Sergeant Wade, report. What is your status?" Lieutenant Hayes took the radio. His hand was shaking. "Sir, the ambush is broken. All 3 German positions are silent. We have 0 additional casualties since Sergeant Wade began engagement." Silence on the other end. Then, "Say again, Lieutenant. Did you say 0 additional casualties?" "Yes, sir. The German guns are silent. We are securing the positions now." Medics rushed forward to help the 11 wounded soldiers. Other men advanced carefully, their rifles ready toward the German positions. When they reached the first position, they found what Wade already knew would be there. Bodies, precise wounds, headshots, chest shots. No wild spray of bullets in the walls, no wasted ammunition, just clean-aimed fire. Private Sullivan walked back to Wade. His face was pale. "Jesus Christ, Wade, you actually did it." Wade was reloading his magazine. His hands were steady. "We did it, Mike. You trusted the method." Private Lee was sitting in the rubble. His hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "I killed 3 men," he said quietly. Wade moved over to him, put a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "You saved 36, Danny. Never forget the difference." Lee looked up at him with wet eyes. "Does it get easier, the killing?" Wade was quiet for a moment. He thought about his father, about the nightmares the old man had every night after coming home from the First World War, about the way his hands shook when he held a rifle, about the warning he had given his son. "No," Wade said finally, "but you learned to carry it." "Did your father teach you that?" Wade pulled out a worn photograph from his breast pocket. A young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile. Sarah, his fiancée, waiting for him back in Montana. "No," Wade said, "I'm still learning." By 7:30 that morning, the street was secure. The wounded were being evacuated. The dead were being covered with blankets. Captain Brennan arrived to survey the scene. He walked through the 3 German positions, counted the bodies, examined the wounds, looked at the stone walls where the American soldiers had taken cover. The walls were chewed up by German bullets. Thousands of rounds had torn into the stone. But the American positions showed only minimal fire. Just the precise aimed shots that Wade's teams had taken. Brennan found Wade sitting on a pile of rubble cleaning his weapon. "Sergeant," Brennan said. His voice was different now, quieter. "I owe you an apology." "No, sir. You followed doctrine. I changed it." "Explain it to me again." Slowly. Wade stood, set his rifle down, picked up a piece of charcoal from the burned building, started drawing on a relatively intact wall. "The Germans think firepower wins," Wade said, sketching the 3 machine gun positions. 1,200 rounds per minute beats 500. More bullets equals more hits. That is the math they were taught. He drew lines representing fields of fire, showed how the 3 German guns had created a perfect killing zone. "But that math only works if both sides are shooting the same way," Wade continued. "If both sides are just spraying bullets and hoping for hits." He drew the American positions, showed the sight lines. "Our BRs can hit a target at 600 meters. These Germans were less than 120 meters away. At that distance, if you know what you are doing, you can put a bullet through a coin." Brennan studied the diagram. "So you waited for their reload cycles?" "Yes, sir. Watched their patterns, timed the reloads, hit them when they could not shoot back." "And aimed at the gunner specifically?" "Yes, sir. Take out the gunner, the whole position stops. Even if they have replacements, it takes time to get someone new on the weapon. And while they are doing that, we hit the replacement too." Brennan was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at Wade, really looked at him. "Where did you learn this?" "My father, sir. He was infantry in the First World War. 116th Infantry Regiment. They called him One-Shot Wade. He killed 47 German soldiers in that war. Never wasted a bullet." "Why did he not teach this to the Army?" Wade's expression darkened. "He tried, sir. In 1919, after he came home, he wrote letters to the War Department, explained his methods. They told him volume of fire was the future. That individual marksmanship did not matter anymore with automatic weapons. And then he stopped talking, stopped writing, came home to Montana and tried to forget. But the nightmares never stopped. The gas damage to his lungs never healed. He died in '42, right after Pearl Harbor." Wade picked up his rifle again, started reassembling it. "Before he died, he told me something. He said in the woods, patience beats panic. And he said, never become the thing you are hunting." "What did he mean by that?" Wade finished with his rifle, slung it over his shoulder. "I think he meant do not let the war turn you into a killer. Stay human. Remember why you are fighting." Brennan nodded slowly. "That is why you let those German soldiers retreat. Lieutenant Hayes told me. You had them in your sights but did not fire. They were done fighting, sir. The battle was over. That is not what doctrine says." "No, sir, it is not." Brennan made a decision. "Tonight, battalion headquarters. Every officer needs to see this. You are going to explain your method to the whole command staff." "Sir, I am just a sergeant." "You are a sergeant who just saved 47 lives with 64 bullets. Every officer in this division needs to learn what you know." That evening, Wade stood in front of 40 officers and senior sergeants at battalion headquarters. He used the same piece of charcoal, the same rough diagrams, explained the same principles. Some of the officers were skeptical. A major in his 50s, career Army, spoke up. "This contradicts everything we teach at infantry school. Suppressive fire is the foundation of modern tactics." A younger lieutenant responded, "But sir, it worked. 15 German casualties, 0 additional American casualties. Those are not numbers we usually see." The debate grew heated, old doctrine versus new reality, theory versus practice. Finally, Colonel Wright, the battalion commander, held up his hand for silence. "Gentlemen, the results speak for themselves. We have been losing too many men in these urban engagements. If Sergeant Wade has found a better way, we need to implement it." He turned to Captain Brennan. "Your company will trial this method. Every BR gunner trains with Wade for 3 days. Then we evaluate results in the field." To Wade, he said, "You are temporarily assigned to training duty. Teach these men what you know. For the next 3 days, Wade worked with 24 BR gunners, teaching them to aim instead of spray, to wait instead of panic, to think like hunters instead of soldiers. Privately assisted, helped demonstrate the techniques, encouraged the younger soldiers who were struggling with the concepts. Mike Sullivan became the most vocal advocate. He had been the biggest skeptic on that frozen December morning. Now he was telling every soldier who would listen about how precision beat power. Eddie Torres wrote everything down, created a training manual by hand, diagrams, step-by-step instructions, timing charts for different enemy weapons. December 22, 1901, 4 days after the ambush in Ortona, Company B moved through another Italian town, San Leonardo. The Germans were waiting. Another ambush. 2 MG-42 positions this time, plus mortars. But now the Americans were ready. 6 BR teams trained in Wade's method. The German guns opened fire at 8:15 in the morning. The American BR teams did not panic, did not spray bullets wildly. They identified the gunners, watched the patterns, waited for the reload cycles. Then they fired. 3 to 5 rounds, precise, aimed. 4 minutes later, both German machine gun positions were silent. The mortars without infantry support relocated and became ineffective. The Americans advanced, took the town, 3 American casualties, 12 German casualties, battle duration 8 minutes. In a normal engagement with those same forces, the Americans would have taken 15 to 20 casualties. The battle would have lasted 30 minutes or more, would have required artillery support. Colonel Wright reviewed the after-action reports, called Wade to his headquarters. "It works," the colonel said simply. "This method of yours actually works. We are implementing it division-wide. Captain Brennan is writing the tactical manual. You are now a training instructor. We are pulling you off the front line." Wade felt something twist in his chest, relief and guilt mixed together. "Sir, my men are still out there, and you will save more of them by teaching than by fighting. You have done your part on the line, Sergeant. Now you teach others how to survive." Wade was transferred to Naples, training command, no more frontline combat, no more frozen streets and German machine guns, just teaching, day after day, showing young soldiers how to aim, how to wait, how to think, how to come home alive. He wrote letters to Sarah every night, told her about the teaching, about the soldiers learning his father's methods, about the lives being saved. Her letters came back full of love and patience. She was waiting for him in Montana, in the mountains, where the forest grew tall and the rivers ran clear, and the war was just a distant nightmare. He carried her photograph everywhere, worn at the edges now from being handled so many times. Her smile was fading in the cheap wartime paper, but her eyes still held that look that said she believed in him, that she would wait as long as it took, that she would help him find his way back to being human when this was all over. December turned to January. January turned to February. The war ground on. But the casualty rates in units using Wade's precision fire methods dropped. 40% reduction in some companies, 50% in others. The method spread, not just through the 3rd Infantry Division. The 88th Infantry Division heard about it, requested Wade to train their BR gunners. British observers from the 8th Army came to watch, started implementing similar tactics. By February, 186 different infantry sections had filed reports documenting successful engagements using precision automatic fire. 186 battles where Allied soldiers were outgunned on paper, but won anyway. Because one hunting guide from Montana remembered what his father taught him in the forests. Because he understood that patience beats panic. Because he knew that sometimes the slow gun that hits is better than the fast gun that misses. Because he changed the way America fought a war. The war changed after Ortona, not the whole war. Just the small parts where American soldiers with Browning automatic rifles remembered what a hunting guide from Montana had taught them. By March 1945, Wade had trained over 300 soldiers, men from different companies, different divisions. Some were veterans who thought they knew everything about combat. Some were fresh replacements who had never fired a shot in anger. Wade taught them all the same lesson. Every shot should have a name on it. He stood on makeshift ranges outside Naples, watching young men learn to slow down, to breathe, to aim instead of spray. Private Danny Lee had become his assistant instructor. The scared 19-year-old from that December morning had found something inside himself during those 6 minutes, something stronger than fear. Now he helped other scared young men find the same thing. Mike Sullivan wrote letters home to Boston, told his family about the new tactics, about how American ingenuity was beating German firepower. His letters were censored, of course, the details removed. But the pride came through anyway. The statistics told their own story. 3rd Infantry Division casualties from machine gun fire dropped by 42% in January, 47% in February, 51% in March. Ammunition expenditure fell by more than half. The logistics officers could not believe the numbers. Soldiers were using fewer bullets but achieving better results. Other divisions heard about it, requested their own training. The 88th Infantry, the 91st, the 34th, British units too. Observers from the 8th Army watched Wade teach, took notes, brought the methods back to their own soldiers. By March, 186 different infantry sections had filed after action reports documenting successful engagements using precision automatic fire tactics. 186 separate battles where the old math about firepower did not apply anymore. Where thinking beat shooting, where patience beat panic. But Wade's name was not in any of the official reports. The tactical manual that Captain Bren wrote was titled Doctrine Update 44-12 Precision Automatic Fire. It credited the innovations to 3rd Infantry Division command staff, to unnamed officers who had analyzed combat effectiveness and developed new methodologies. No mention of Sergeant Thomas Wade. No mention of a hunting guide. No mention of a father who had tried to teach these same lessons after the First World War. Wade did not care, or he told himself he did not care. The method was spreading. Soldiers were surviving. That was what mattered. But Danny Lee cared. He cornered Wade one evening after training. His young face was angry in the fading Italian sun. "They stole it," Lee said. "Your method, your father's method, and they are not even giving you credit." Wade was cleaning his rifle, the same bar he had carried since England. The weapon knew his hands now, fit them perfectly. "They are using it, Danny. That is what matters. You deserve recognition." My father deserved recognition too, but he did not get it. Came home, tried to teach, the Army got ignored. Then he stopped trying. Wade looked up at the young soldier, but his method survived anyway. Through me, now through you, through every soldier we train, the method matters more than the name. Lee sat down heavily. It is not right. A lot of things in war are not right, but soldiers are going home alive who would be dead otherwise. I can live without credit. I cannot live knowing I kept this to myself. The war in Europe was winding down. Everyone could feel it. The Germans were retreating on all fronts. The news from the east said the Russians were pushing toward Berlin. In the west, American and British forces were crossing the Rhine. It would be over soon. Wade received a letter from Sarah in April. Her handwriting was shaky. She was sick. Nothing serious, she said. Just a bad flu. But it had been weeks, and she was not getting better. He read that letter 5 times, stared at the words until they blurred, wanted to go home immediately, wanted to be there with her. But the Army said no. Training instructors were too valuable. He would ship home when his unit rotated. Not before, so he trained more soldiers, wrote longer letters, tried not to think about Sarah lying sick in their cabin in Montana while he was thousands of miles away teaching boys how to kill. May 8th, 1945. The announcement came over the radio in the training compound. Germany had surrendered. The war in Europe was over. Soldiers cheered, threw their helmets in the air, hugged each other, cried. Wade stood alone, thinking about all the men who had not made it to this day. Lieutenant Hayes killed in March. Eddie Torres dead in Germany 2 weeks before the surrender. Thinking about the 47 German soldiers he had killed. The exact same number his father had killed in the First World War. Wondering if that was coincidence or fate or just the universe's cruel sense of humor. June 1945. Wade finally received his orders. Shipping home. 2 years and 4 months since he had left Montana. He boarded the transport ship with 800 other soldiers. Men who had survived, who were going home. Mike Sullivan found him on deck the first night out. "What will you do?" Sullivan asked. Back in Montana, Wade was quiet for a long time, watching the dark water slide past the ship. "Marry Sarah, go back to the mountains. Hunt. Will you hunt again? After everything?" Wade did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the German gunner. The first one. The way the man had fallen when Wade's bullets hit him. The way his replacement had jumped up. The way Wade had dropped him too. Thinking about all the others. The bodies in the street. The precision wounds. "I do not know," Wade said finally. "I do not know if I can kill anything anymore." Danny Lee joined them. He was going home to California, had a girl waiting for him there. They were getting married in August. "You saved my life," Lee said to Wade, "twice. Once in Ortona, and once by showing me I could be brave." Wade put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "You were always brave, Danny. You just did not know it yet." They stood together, watching the ocean. Three men who had seen things they would never talk about, who had done things they would carry forever. The nightmare started on the ship. Wade would wake up gasping, covered in sweat, the sounds of the MG-42s ripping through his dreams, the smell of cordite and blood. Lee found him one night on deck, 3 in the morning. Wade was staring at the stars. "Bad dreams?" Lee asked. "I count them," Wade said quietly. "Everyone. 47, same as my father." "But you saved hundreds." "I know, but I remember the 47. Does your father's warning still bother you about not becoming the thing you hunt?" Wade was quiet for a long time. Then every day. They reached New York in July. The processing took weeks. Medical checks, debriefing, paperwork. Finally, Wade got on a train heading west, across Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, the Great Plains, the mountains. Home. Sarah was waiting at the station in Missoula. She looked thinner than he remembered, pale, but her smile was the same. That smile that had kept him alive through 2 years of war. They held each other for a long time, not talking, just holding. "You came back," she whispered. "I promised I would." They were married 2 weeks later. Small ceremony, 20 people. Mike Sullivan came out from Boston to be best man. Danny Lee drove up from California. After the ceremony, Wade visited his father's grave, laid flowers on the stone. "I came home, Dad," Wade said quietly. "I remembered the woods. Tried not to become what you warned me about. I hope I made you proud." The wind moved through the trees. No answer came. But Wade felt something settle in his chest. Some weight lift slightly. He and Sarah moved into a cabin in the Bitterroot Mountains. The same cabin where Wade had grown up, where his father had taught him to hunt, where the nightmares had started for the old man after the First World War. Now Wade's nightmares filled the same rooms. Sarah would wake him gently, hold him while he shook. Never asked what he saw in the dreams, just held him until the shaking stopped. Fall came. Hunting season opened. Wade tried to go back to his old work. Hunting guide. Taking city men into the mountains to shoot elk and deer. His first client was a businessman from Denver. Rich, loud, expensive rifle he did not know how to use properly. They tracked an elk for 2 days. Finally found a bull. Perfect shot, 150 yards. Clear sight line. Wade helped the man set up. Explained the breathing, the aim, the squeeze. The man fired, missed, fired again, missed again, emptied the magazine. The elk ran. "It's your turn," the man said, handing Wade the rifle. "Show me how it is done." Wade took the rifle, found another elk through the scope, a doe this time, smaller, easier shot. He lined up the sight, controlled his breathing, put his finger on the trigger, and could not pull it. He saw the German gunner. Falling backward, the replacement, the bodies in the street. The elk stood there, unaware, an easy shot, the kind Wade had made 1,000 times before the war. He could not do it. He lowered the rifle, handed it back to the man. "I cannot." "What do you mean you cannot?" "You are supposed to be the best guide in Montana." "I was. I am not anymore. Keep your money. I am done." Wade walked back to the cabin, alone through the forest. The trees his father had shown him, the trails they had walked together. Sarah found him that evening sitting on the porch, staring at the mountains. You thought you could go back, she said gently. I am not the same man who left. That is okay. Find a new way to be in the mountains. Wade looked at her, at this woman who had waited for him, who held him through the nightmares, who never asked him to be anything other than what he was. What if I do not know how, then we figure it out together? Wade became a forest ranger. The job opened up that winter, managing timberlands, planting trees, protecting wildlife instead of killing it. He found peace in the work, in creation instead of destruction, in preserving life. The nightmares became less frequent, not gone, just less. In 1908, Sarah gave birth to their first child, a son. They named him William Wade II, after his grandfather, after one-shot Wade, who had tried to teach the Army his methods and been ignored. The baby had Wade's eyes, his serious expression. Even as an infant, he would stare at things with complete focus. Sarah laughed. He is going to be just like you. God help him, Wade said, but he was smiling. In 1951, a daughter. They named her Anna. Sarah was surprised. Anna? That is not a family name. Wade was holding the baby, looking at her tiny face. No, it is from a German soldier, Obergefreiter Klaus Hoffmann. He had a daughter named Anna, 8 years old. He just wanted to go home to her, like I wanted to come home to you. Where is he now? I do not know. I let him retreat that day. He and 8 other Germans. I could have killed them. Doctrine said I should have, but the fight was over. Sarah touched his face gently. You stayed human. I tried. The years passed. Wade raised his children, taught them about the forest, about patience, about making every action count. He never talked about the war, never told them about Ortona, about the 6 minutes that changed everything. William grew up serious and focused, joined the Army in 1970, became an infantry officer. Anna became a teacher, like the man Wade had let live that December morning. Wade worked his forest ranger job, planted thousands of trees, watched them grow, found satisfaction in that, in creating things that would outlive him. Sometimes he would see news about the wars, Korea, Vietnam, would see American soldiers using short-controlled bursts from their automatic weapons, aiming instead of spraying, would recognize his father's method, his method, being used without anyone knowing where it came from. Official military history said the tactics were developed by U.S. infantry division commanders in World War II. No names, no individuals, just organizations and units. Wade never complained. The method survived. That was what mattered. But it bothered Danny Lee, now a successful insurance salesman in California, married, 3 kids, living the American dream. Lee visited Montana in 1968, first time in 20 years. He and Wade sat on the porch, drinking coffee, watching the mountains. They still do not credit you, Lee said. I looked it up, the training manuals, the tactical documentation. Your name is nowhere. I know. Does that bother you? Wade thought about it. Sometimes, but then I think about all the soldiers who came home because of what we taught them. And I realize the name does not matter. The results matter. Your father must have felt the same way. He tried to get the Army to listen. After the First World War, they ignored him. It broke something in him. The fighting already broke him. But being ignored after that finished it. Wade sipped his coffee. I am not broken. I have Sarah. I have my kids. I have these mountains. I have peace. That is more than my father got. More than a lot of men got. But the history books will forget my name. That is okay. History forgets most names, but the lessons survive if they are worth surviving. June 1985. Wade was 69 years old. Sarah was sick again. Cancer this time. The doctor said months, not years. Wade took care of her every day. The woman who had waited for him, who had saved him after the war, who had given him a life worth living. One afternoon, the mail carrier brought a letter from Germany. The return address said Klaus Hoffmann, Hamburg. Wade stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. His hands were shaking. Inside was a letter, written in careful English. Dear Sergeant Wade, I do not know if you remember me. December 18th, 1944, Ortona, Italy. I was the German Obergefreiter who retreated with 8 men when our machine gun positions fell. You let us go. You tracked us in your sights but did not fire. I have lived 41 years because of your mercy. Wade sat down heavily. Sarah came out to the porch, saw his face. What is it? He handed her the letter. She read it, then looked at him with tears in her eyes. The letter continued. I learned your name from American military archives. I wanted to thank you and to tell you your methods saved my life twice. Once when you did not shoot me, and a second time 3 months later when I surrendered to American forces. I trusted Americans would aim not spray, would show precision, not cruelty. I became a school teacher again after the war. In Hamburg, I teach my students precision in thought beats chaos in action. I learned this from you. My daughter Anna is now 51, a doctor in Munich. She has children. Because you let me live. If you wish I would visit, to thank you in person. Sarah was crying. Will you see him? Wade looked at the mountains, at the forest he had spent 40 years protecting, thought about the German gunner falling, about all the others, about the weight he had carried. Yes, he said, I think I need to. September 1985. Klaus Hoffmann arrived in Missoula, 75 years old now, white hair, walking with a cane. His daughter Anna came with him, a serious woman with kind eyes. The first moment was awkward. Two old men standing on a porch in Montana. One had tried to kill the other. The other had chosen mercy. Then Hoffman extended his hand. Thank you for my life. Wade gripped it. Thank you for remembering that mercy matters. They talked 4 hours about the war, about what came after, about becoming teachers, about raising children, about trying to live with what they had done. Why did you not shoot me that day? Hoffman asked. Because you were retreating. The fight was over. My father taught me something. You are not hunting the animal. You are hunting the food. When you have enough, you stop. Hoffman nodded slowly. Not all soldiers think this way. No, but we are not just soldiers. We are men trying to go home. You wanted to go home to your daughter Anna. I wanted to go home to Sarah. That made us the same. Anna Hoffman took Wade's hand. Thank you for my father's life, for my life, for my children's lives. Wade looked at this woman, a doctor, saving lives, existing because he had chosen not to pull the trigger 41 years ago. He thought about his own daughter, also named Anna, also making the world better. Your father was a good man in a bad situation, Wade said, just like all of us. They spent 3 days together, Hoffman and Wade, sharing stories, finding common ground. Two men who had been enemies, discovering they were just men. On the last day, Hoffman said something that Wade would remember for the rest of his life. You taught me that Americans could be merciful, that power and precision can coexist with humanity. I have taught my students this for 40 years. That is your legacy too, not just the tactics. Humanity. After Hoffman left, Sarah was weaker. The cancer was winning. She died in November, peaceful, in their bed, with Wade holding her hand. Thank you for waiting for me, Wade whispered, in the mountains. She smiled, squeezed his hand, always worth waiting for. Then she was gone. Wade buried her next to his father, two people who had saved him, who had kept him human. He was alone now, 69 years old, living in the cabin in the mountains, walking the forests, remembering. His son William visited, now a colonel, teaching tactics at Fort Benning. Dad, do you know what we teach the soldiers now? What? Your method, short controlled bursts, aimed fire, everything you taught Danny Lee and the others. I know. Do you know who gets credit in the manuals? Division staff, unnamed officers, I know that too. William was quiet. Then does that bother you? Wade thought about Hoffman, about Anna, about all the students being taught precision in thought, about soldiers coming home alive. No, Wade said. The method survived. That is what matters. Names fade, lessons last. March 1987. The doctor's office in Missoula, fluorescent lights humming overhead, sterile walls, the smell of antiseptic and fear. Wade sat in the chair listening to words he had expected but was not ready to hear. Lung cancer, stage 4, 3 months, maybe 6 if he was lucky. He was 71 years old. He had survived 2 years of combat in World War II. had lived through the nightmares, had buried his father and his wife, had raised two good children who became good adults. 3 months seemed like enough time. Seemed like mercy, actually. Quick, not drawn out. Will there be pain? Wade asked. The doctor hesitated. We can manage it. Keep you comfortable. I do not want to die confused, drugged up. I want to be clear until the end. The pain will get worse. I have carried worse pain for 40 years. I can carry this too. Wade drove home to the cabin, the same cabin where he had grown up, where his father had taught him to hunt, where he had raised his own children, where Sarah had died just 16 months ago. The mountains looked the same as always, eternal, indifferent to human suffering, indifferent to human joy, just existing, growing, renewing. He had planted thousands of trees in these mountains over 40 years as a forest ranger. Many of them were mature now, tall, strong. They would outlive him by centuries. That thought brought comfort. William came first. Colonel William Wade II, 53 years old now, still teaching at Fort Benning, still training soldiers in tactics his father had pioneered without knowing it. They sat on the porch, father and son. Spring was coming to Montana, snow melting, new growth starting. How long? William asked. 3 months, maybe less. William's jaw tightened, military discipline holding back emotion. What do you need? Nothing, just wanted you to know. They sat in silence for a while. Then William said something that made Wade's breath catch. Dad, we teach your method every day at Benning. Short controlled bursts, aimed fire, pattern recognition. Everything you taught those soldiers in Italy. I know. Do you know who invented it according to the training manuals? No one specific, just credited to division staff during World War II. Does that bother you? Wade watched a hawk circling over the trees. Hunting. Patient. Precise. Your grandfather tried to get recognized for his methods after the First World War. Wrote letters, tried to teach. They ignored him. It broke something in him. Made the nightmares worse. He turned to his son. I am not broken. I have had a good life. Better than I deserved after what I did in the war. The method survived. That is what matters. But your legacy. My legacy is sitting next to me. You, your sister, your children, the trees I planted, the soldiers who came home alive because Danny Lee and Mike Sullivan learned to aim instead of spray. That is legacy enough. William left the next day. Duty called. Always duty. Anna came the following week. Wade's daughter, 40 years old, teaching 3rd grade in Bozeman. Her students loved her. She had that gift, making children want to learn. She cried when she saw how thin he had become in just 2 weeks. It is okay, Wade said, holding her. I have had 71 good years. That is more than most men get. I am not ready to lose you. No one is ever ready, but I am at peace, Anna. I made my peace with the war, with your mother's death, with everything. She stayed for 3 days, cooked meals he could not eat, told him stories about her students, made him laugh. On the last evening, she asked the question Wade had been waiting for. Why did you name me Anna? Mom said it was from a German soldier. Wade told her the whole story. December 18th, 1944. The ambush, the 6 minutes. Hoffman retreating with 8 men. The decision to let them live. He had a daughter, 8 years old, named Anna. He just wanted to go home to her, like I wanted to come home to your mother. Did you ever see him again? Once, 1985, 2 years ago, he came here to Montana, brought his daughter. She became a doctor in Munich, has children. All because I let him live that day. Anna was crying again. You saved so many people, Dad. I killed some too. 47, same number as your grandfather. I carry them all. But you stayed human. That is what Mom always said. The war could have made you a killer, but you stayed human. Wade smiled. I tried. Your mother helped. These mountains helped. You and William helped. And the Germans who made me remember that enemies are just men far from home. Mike Sullivan came in April. 72 years old now. Successful businessman in Boston. Retired, living well. They sat on the porch drinking coffee, watching the mountains wake up from winter. You look terrible, Sullivan said. Dying will do that. How long? Weeks now. Maybe a month. Sullivan was quiet. Then, do you remember what I said that morning in Ortona, that your plan was crazy? I remember. I was wrong about so many things. I thought firepower was everything. Thought more bullets meant winning. You taught me different. Taught me to think. That saved my life more than once after you got transferred to training command. You saved your own life, Mike. You learned. You adapted. That is what good soldiers do. I have tried to find your name in the history books, in the official records. Nothing, like you never existed. I existed. You know it. Danny knows it. Every soldier we trained knows it. That is enough. It should not be enough. Wade shrugged. Should not changes nothing. Is remains. And what is that the methods survived even when my name did not. I can live with that. Or die with it, I suppose. Sullivan left the next morning. Hugged Wade hard. Did not say goodbye. Just, see you around, Sergeant. Both of them knew that was a lie, but it was a kind lie. June 1987. Wade was in the hospital now. The pain had gotten too bad for home. He had held out as long as he could, but even his stubbornness had limits. The room was small, window overlooking the parking lot, not the mountains. That bothered him more than the pain. He wanted to see the mountains one more time. William was there when Danny Lee arrived. Lee was 62 now, insurance executive. Wealthy, successful. But when he saw Wade in the hospital bed, all that success meant nothing. He was 19 again, scared, waiting for Wade to tell him how to survive. Tom, Lee said. His voice broke on the name. Hello, Danny. Good of you to come. Of course I came. You saved my life. Wade smiled weakly. You saved your own life. I just showed you how. Lee pulled a chair close to the bed. William stood by the window, giving them space. Tom, there is something I never told you about after the war. Something I should have told you 40 years ago. What is it? Lee pulled out a folder, old yellowed papers inside. In 1940, I was at Fort Benning, training command. I wrote a detailed report about December 18th, 1944, about you, about your father, about the method that saved our lives and changed infantry tactics. He opened the folder, showed Wade pages of handwritten diagrams, testimony. I sent it to Army Command, requested official recognition for you, asked them to credit you in the training manuals, to acknowledge what you had done. Wade stared at the papers, at 40-year-old words written by a young man trying to honor his teacher. They rejected it, Lee continued. His voice was thick with emotion. Said doctrine does not credit individuals. Only units, only divisions. Said your methods had been integrated into standard practice, but attributing them to one man would undermine institutional authority. Lee was crying now. I tried, Tom. I swear I tried to get you recognized. I failed you. Wade reached out, took Lee's hand. His grip was weak now, but steady. Danny, you did not fail me. But they do not know it was you. Your name is nowhere. But you know. Mike knows. Klaus Hoffman knows. Every soldier who came home because of what we taught them knows, even if they do not know my name. That is not failure. That is success. How can you say that? Wade closed his eyes for a moment, gathering strength. When he opened them, they were clear, focused. The same eyes that had looked down a rifle sight and changed warfare. Do you remember what you asked me once on the ship coming home? You asked if carrying the weight gets easier. I remember. I told you it does. When you realize you carried it so others would not have to. That is still true. I carried the weight of what I did in the war. The 47 men I killed. The decisions I made. And I carried it so my method could spread without being tied to one man's story. One man's ghosts. Wade squeezed Lee's hand. If my name was famous, people would focus on me. On whether I was a hero or just a soldier doing his job. But without my name, they focus on the method, on the wisdom, on the lesson. What lesson? That every shot should have a name on it, every action should matter, every choice should count. That patience beats panic, that precision beats power. That is the lesson, not Thomas Wade. The lesson. Lee was sobbing now. You should be remembered. I am remembered. By you, by Mike, by my children, by the students Hoffman taught in Germany, by every soldier who learned to aim instead of spray. The forest does not remember the hunter's name Danny, but the forest still grows. William stepped forward. Dad, there is something else you should know. What? Your grandson, William III, my son. He is an infantry training instructor now. At Fort Benning. Wade smiled. No, you told me. But do you know what he teaches? What? Your method. Every day. Short controlled bursts. Pattern recognition. Aimed fire. He does not know it is yours. He thinks it is just standard doctrine. But it is there. In him. In thousands of young soldiers. Your blood teaching your wisdom 3 generations later. Wade closed his eyes, felt something settle in his chest. Something that had been restless for 42 years finally finding peace. Then it survived, he whispered. Not the name, the wisdom. That is better. Wisdom should outlive the wise. Lee stayed until evening, held Wade's hand, told him stories about his grandchildren, about his life in California, about the business he had built. Before he left, he leaned close and said, "You taught me how to be brave. I have tried to pass that on to my kids, my grandkids. Your lesson lives in them too." Good, that is good. June 20th, 1987. The family gathered. William, Anna, William's son, the young infantry instructor, Anna's children, all of them crowded into the small hospital room. Wade was very weak now, breathing shallow, but his mind was clear. He had refused the heavy pain medications, wanted to be present for this, for the end. He looked at his grandson, 24 years old, strong, serious. You teach soldiers how to fight. Yes, sir. Teach them to think too, to aim, to wait, to make every action count. I do, Grandpa. Short control bursts, precision fire. It is standard doctrine now. Wade smiled. Good, that is good. To Anna's children, teenagers now, he said, be kind, be precise, do not waste anything, not bullets, not words, not your lives. Everything should have a name on it. Everything should matter. They nodded solemnly, not fully understanding but sensing the weight of the words. To Anna, you teach children. That is the most important work, more important than what I did. You create the future. I just tried to survive the past. To William, you did good. You are a good man, a good father, better than I was at your age. I am proud. To all of them, the mountains teach patience. Remember that. When life is hard, when things move too fast, go to the mountains. They have been here forever. They will be here after we are all gone. That perspective helps. June 25th, 1987, morning. The room was quiet except for the machines. The family had gone to get coffee. Wade was alone. He stared at the ceiling, thought about his father, about Sarah, about all the men who had died in the war while he survived, thought about the German gunner falling, about Hoffman retreating, about the choice to show mercy, thought about Danny Lee's scared face becoming brave, about Mike Sullivan's skepticism becoming faith, about Klaus Hoffman's daughter becoming a doctor, about his own children, his grandchildren, the trees he had planted, about every action rippling outward, touching lives he would never meet, changing futures he would never see. His breathing became labored. The pain was intense now. But he did not call for medication. Not yet. He wanted to feel this. The transition, the ending, the final moment when the hunter becomes part of the forest. William came back first, saw his father struggling. Dad, should I call the nurse? Wade shook his head slightly. No, just stay. William sat, took his father's hand. Thank you, Wade whispered, for everything. Thank you for teaching me, for showing me how to be a man. Wade's eyes closed, his breathing slowed, then stopped. Colonel William Wade II sat holding his father's hand for a long time after, thinking about everything the old man had taught him, about precision, about patience, about making every action count, about staying human even when the world tried to make you a monster. The funeral was small, just family and a few old veterans. Mike Sullivan came. Danny Lee came. Both old men now, both crying unashamedly. They buried Wade next to Sarah, next to his father. 3 graves in a row, 3 generations, 3 teachers. The headstone was simple. Thomas Wade, 1916 to 1987. Hunter, Ranger, Father, no mention of the war, no mention of Ortona, no mention of the 6 minutes that changed everything. Just the mountains, silent, eternal, keeping their secrets. Years passed. The Cold War ended. The Soviet Union collapsed. New wars came. Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Iraq. American soldiers still used short controlled bursts, still aimed instead of sprayed, still followed the doctrine that an unnamed sergeant and his hunting guide father had pioneered. In 2003, Colonel William Wade III, now retired, was cleaning out his grandfather's equipment, preparing to sell it. The place had been empty since the old man died 16 years ago. In the attic, he found a footlocker. Inside were papers, journals, photographs. One journal was marked December 1944 to May 1945. He opened it, started reading. The entry for December 18, 1944 was detailed, precise, like a training manual. Today I taught soldiers something my father tried to teach the Army after World War I. That patience beats panic, that precision beats power, that every shot should have a name on it. 3 German machine gun positions, 3 bar teams, 64 rounds, 6 minutes. They were laughing at our slow guns until we stopped all 3 positions. Sometimes the slow gun that hits is better than the fast gun that misses. William read every page, realized he had been teaching his grandfather's method his entire career without knowing it. He called Danny Lee, Mike Sullivan, both men in their late 70s now. "Did you know about this?" he asked. "About my grandfather's journal?" "No," Lee said, "but it does not surprise me. Tom was always precise, always documented things." Together, the 3 of them compiled a small article, The Wade Protocol, A Hunter's War. They submitted it to a military history journal. It was published in 2004. Barely noticed, a few hundred readers, but it was archived, saved, part of the record now. The truth was there for anyone who cared to look. 20 years later, in 2024, Wade's great-granddaughter stood in the Montana mountains, 22 years old, tracking an elk through fresh snow. Her name was Emma. She had grown up hearing stories about her great-grandfather, the forest ranger who loved the mountains, who taught his children to be precise, to be patient. She did not know about the war, about Ortona, about the 6 minutes, but she knew his lesson. Every shot should have a name on it. She found the elk, lined up her sight, controlled her breathing, squeezed the trigger gently. 1 shot, clean kill. She whispered, "For you, great-grandpa." In the silence after, if you listen carefully, you could almost hear it. That sound, tack, 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 the sound that had changed warfare. The sound that had saved thousands of lives. The sound of precision over panic. The lesson lived on. In her. In every soldier who learned to aim instead of spray. In every person who learned that patience beats speed. That thinking beats reacting. That quality beats quantity. Thomas Wade died without fame, without recognition, without his name in the history books. But his wisdom lived, passed down through generations, through soldiers and teachers and rangers and hunters, through anyone who learned that every action should matter, that every choice should count. The mountains kept his secret, but the mountains also kept his lesson. And on cold December mornings when the air is frozen and the world is still, if you stand in the right place in the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana, you can feel it. That presence, that wisdom, teaching us still, every shot should have a name on it. Every action should matter. Precision beats power. Patience beats panic. That is the lesson of the hunter who changed war. The man history forgot, but whose wisdom history could not erase. Thomas Wade, 1916 to 1987. He saved thousands by teaching them to aim. He stayed human by choosing mercy. He lived well by making every moment count. His name faded, his lesson endured, and in a world that moves too fast, that speaks too loud, that shoots too wildly, his lesson matters more than ever. Slow down, aim carefully, make it count. The slow gun that hits will always beat the fast gun that misses. Always. The mountains remember, the forest remembers, the soldiers remember. And now you remember too. The story of Thomas Wade, the hunting guide who became a sergeant, who changed warfare with 64 bullets in 6 minutes, who taught soldiers to think instead of panic, who showed mercy to his enemies, who planted trees instead of taking lives, who raised good children, whose wisdom lives on in ways he never imagined. That is legacy. That is what matters. Not fame, not recognition, not having your name in books, but having your wisdom in hearts, having your lesson in lives, having your method save thousands of soldiers you will never meet, having your philosophy guide people who will never know your name. That is immortality. Thomas Wade achieved it without ever seeking it, by simply being a good man in terrible times, by remembering his father's warning, by not becoming the thing he hunted, by staying human when the world demanded he become a killer, by teaching others to do the same. The war took much from Wade, his innocence, his ability to hunt, years of his life, nights of sleep, but it could not take his humanity. He kept that, protected it, passed it on, to Danny Lee, to Mike Sullivan, to Klaus Hoffman, to his children, to his grandchildren, to soldiers he trained, to men he never met, to you if you will receive it. Every shot should have a name on it. In war, that meant aim carefully, value every bullet, make every action count. In life, it means the same thing. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every action you take should be deliberate, should be aimed, should matter. Do not waste your shots. Do not spray wildly and hope something hits. Aim, wait, make it count. That is the lesson of the hunter. That is the wisdom that outlived the wise man. That is what Thomas Wade taught us. And 80 years after that frozen December morning in Ortona, his lesson still echoes through the mountains of Montana. Through the forests his father taught him to love. Through the trees he planted with his own hands. Through the children and grandchildren who carry his blood and his wisdom. The mountains remember the hunter. Even when history forgets his name, the lesson remains. Every shot should have a name on it. Make yours count.